For some reason I feel like this one could use a little bit of backing music. Hit it, me. I would be willing to wager that this is not the first time you've heard someone talk about individualism and collectivism, specifically from the point of view of being in favour of individualism. It often comes up when you're talking about democracy. Someone might say this is what the people want, as a group, people as a collective. Or it comes up when someone's talking about racism, saying this is how black people behave, this is how white people behave, as groups, as collectives. And the response will commonly be, that is collectivism. That is not thinking about people as individuals, which is something you must do. But why is that the case? Why think about people as individuals rather than collectives? Isn't collective thinking a reasonable way to view humanity? Isn't it a reasonable scope through which we can address the different ways people interact? Well, potentially. I think there are some situations where the simplification from individuals, a whole bunch of differently acting individuals, simplifying that down to a collective, so you're only dealing with a few entities in your model there, I think that there are some scenarios where that is a totally justified way of looking at it. However, it can get a bit sketchy because it is just that. It is just a simplification. I want to point out a few ways that collectivism can break down and why, in a general sense, it is better to look at the world as a set of individuals rather than as collectives. So without further ado, here are my top 3 collectivist fallacies. Number 1, blaming the collective rather than the individual. Imagine you live in America. Well, not much imagination required for most of my subscribers, but if you don't already, imagine you live in America. And you notice that black people are significantly overrepresented in your country's crime statistics. And then, perhaps you even have a personal experience which reflects this. A black guy steals your car, for example. And in response, you start saying, I hate niggers. That's going to be quoted out of context, but the point is, you apply the blame to the collective, rather than the specific individuals who committed the crimes. What you've just done is entirely destroyed the entire purpose of blame. You see, the reason that blame is useful in the first place is because it disincentivizes certain actions. People don't want to be blamed for things, so they avoid taking actions which are going to result in their being blamed. But if they're part of a collective, which has already been collectively blamed for some terrible action, well then that destroys that disincentive to not do it. Why bother avoiding an action if you're going to be blamed for it anyway? The concept of applying blame to a collective gets really out of hand, though, once you start thinking about it in terms of historical actions of a collective. For example, I've heard a lot of people say that they blame white people for slavery, that current white people hold some guilt for slavery. This is nuts. Not only did only a small percentage of white people back then own slaves, meaning that it's entirely as irrational as the guy blaming black people in general for committing crimes that only some black people commit. But none of those people currently exist. You're blaming an entire group of people for actions which none of the currently living ones at least, committed. Absolutely amazing. And the reverse of this still works as well. Credit is essentially what I'm talking about. Some people, I've heard a lot of white nationalist types, will say, oh well, I'm proud to be white because look at all these great things that my people did. Well, it's very nice for you that you feel that collective pride. I mean, it's a good fuzzy feeling, and far be it for me to dull your high. But you don't really deserve it. You didn't do anything. You just were born a certain race. And the whole reason that we give credit to people, is because we want to incentivize positive actions. And having that collective kind of feeling of credit for some action destroys that. Why would you bother trying to take action to improve your credit, to improve people's opinion of you, if their opinion of you isn't going to change because you're part of a specific collective anyway? Number 2, defending the collective over the individual. I think this one catches so many people out because they think that defending the collective is identical to defending the individuals which make up the collective. But it isn't. A good example to show this is Islam. You see, Islam has a lot of tenets that deny its followers the finer things in life. And it also makes people within the ideology, envisage a whole lot of terrible acts upon one another. So not very good for the individuals in the collective. But a lot of the other tenets require its followers to kill in the name of that ideology, and force people to convert to that ideology. Thus, it helps the ideology propagate, so the collective propagate, without actually doing anything for the individuals which make it up. And in fact, by making its individual members miserable, it makes them more likely to become extremists. People in harsh circumstances are more likely to take harsh action. So, attacking its own members, ruining the lives of its own individuals, makes that collective stronger. Number 3, selecting for a linked factor rather than the actually important one. This kind of thing can happen when you're trying to make a judgment about someone based on some given criteria, but instead of taking a look at that criteria, you take a look at some other correlated criteria. It's a weird mistake to make, right? But I have seen it a lot, especially lately with your white nationalist types. One of the reasons, for example, that they want to favour immigration of white people over black people is because white people will have, on average, higher IQs. Now, this is ignoring, of course, the fact that there are some other races who have even higher average IQs, but putting that to one side for the moment, why would you select based on race on that basis anyway? I mean, you could just put an IQ test at the border or something. If you want to select on intelligence, select on intelligence. Don't find some correlated factor and select for that. Because if you do, then you're not going to be succeeding at your goal, which I thought was to let only intelligent people into your country. You're going to let in a whole lot of white idiots and avoid the geniuses who aren't white. It's a really odd mistake. I'm surprised that people make that one, but they do all the time. Now, I understand that any white nationalist watching this is going to be saying, oh, well, this isn't the only factor involved. It's not just the IQ. There's also things about culture and wealth. Yeah, okay, but a lot of those factors are related to intelligence as well, are correlated. And a lot of those factors you could just test for anyway. You can base the criteria on the important criteria. I'm just doing a little jump cut here to mention that no, that is not an immigration policy I actually advocate. I'm just saying that it's technically better than the race-based one that I'm responding to. To round this off, I want to make an analogy with turbulence. You see, when engineers or scientists are trying to design some aerodynamic shape, they're not going to calculate the trajectory of every single given atom and exactly how it's going to interact with the object. What they're going to do is create a general model which describes fluid dynamics, and then they can create some shape that's going to, most of the time, get the molecules of air to flow around it in the way that they want. However, they still put it in a wind tunnel. And the reason they do that is because their models are imperfect. When you simplify down from your strict granular approach, looking at every individual atom, once you simplify to just general fluid dynamics, you're going to make some mistakes, because it's not a perfect model. No model is perfect. The thing is, though, with human societies, we can be granular. We can look at individual people quite a lot of the time. And all I'm trying to say here is, when you can, do. And when you can't, realize that you're just making a simplification and that it's not necessarily always going to work. Anyway, thanks very much for watching, everyone, and if you liked this one, give me a like and a share, and I might be doing another one of these, because I've definitely got some more fallacies that collectivists tend to run into. Get out of my shitty on a fit.